Hey, Sean Hannity here with a highlight from my radio show today, right here on iHeartRadio.
You can't always get what you want, but you can get Sean Hannity online at Hannity.com.
My daughter Jenna was in an accident in 2006, and Dave Domina was there to help us out. We were in the hospitals and stuff for probably 6 months, and Dave knew right away that we wanted to take care of her, so he had it all worked out for us that he would try to get it so that we could have her at home and have everything that she needed to take care of her, which he did exactly that. Without Dave, we would be in a lot of trouble. So he takes care of her, and he definitely gets the job done.
I'm Dave Domina. I approve this message.
All right, in the interest of fairness, we have had a number of candidates for the U.S. Senate on this program, and we invite their Democratic challengers, and Dave Domina is the first one to take us up on our offer. He is running against Ben Sasse in Nebraska. He's behind by about, well, depending on the polls, anywhere between 20 and 29 points. That ad has a young girl that is comatose with a Dave Domina T-shirt on, and the mother was the one that was speaking in the ad. Do you think that might have been a little bit in bad taste to put a campaign T-shirt on a girl that's comatose?
No, I don't think so at all. This is a young...
She's comatose, isn't she?
Oh, I don't think so at all. This is a decision made by that young girl's mother, who loves and cares for her, takes her everywhere she goes, mainstreams her in life, and wanted to make a strong statement that I will stand up for a disabled person too.
You don't think it's considering the person has no say in getting the T-shirt on them? I don't know. That was a little surprising to me. Let me ask you this question, because you gave an interview. Now, you're running as a Democrat. You're behind in the 20% range, according to the polls. What makes you think you can win this race, being so far behind Ben Sasse?
Well, I'm not behind Ben Sasse, and Ben Sasse knows it. That's why he had Mitt Romney in Nebraska last night. He's had Sarah Palin before, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz. He knows he's in serious trouble, and he's at least smart enough not to drink the Kool-Aid of those silly polls.
Well, the latest CBS News New York Times poll, hardly members of the vast right-wing conspiracy, have you down by 29 points.
Well, we'll see what the voters of Nebraska are saying as they vote every day. I'm going to win the election next Tuesday.
That poll came out yesterday, and you're down 29 points. That sounds a little delusional. Do you think CBS and the New York Times are that far off?
All of Washington's election industry will wonder how we did it. And we did it by doing precisely what the people of Nebraska have asked for, a campaign like they wanted, one that doesn't bring in outsiders, isn't money-driven, and isn't nuanced message-driven, but involves a candidate who will talk with anyone, which is why, Sean, I'm the first Democrat on your program.
Oh, I'm glad you came on. And I had Ben Sasse on. He has very specific proposals about how to balance the budget and stop robbing from our kids, and health care. He had very specific proposals, and energy had very specific proposals. The border's very specific. I'll get into that with you, but there's a big controversy surrounding your campaign, and you gave an interview about it to the Washington Free Beacon, and you stood by your work defending a former Nazi police officer that was stripped of his U.S. citizenship. Now, you were hired, I guess, by a guy by the name of John Kalaman. Is that his name?
No, I was asked to handle a case that involved a Polish man who was specifically found by the court not to be a Nazi and not to be a member of a Nazi organization, who faced deportation for reasons associated with his passport and association during World War II in Lviv, Ukraine, with an auxiliary police force that the court found was not Nazi-related.
Well, according to the Washington Free Beacon, that's not...
His brother was killed by the Nazi military because he was a member of the Polish resistance. His father-in-law was killed by the Soviets during the war. He was not a Nazi.
Let me read from the Detroit Free Press. Hardly members of the right-wing conspiracy. They point out that Kalaman, the man that you represented, quote, and I'm reading directly, repeatedly shot at Jews who tried to escape during roundups, according to the government records recounted in the 2006 Detroit Free Press report on the deportation proceedings. Kalaman killed one Jew and wounded another. Kalaman's real name was Ivan, the government said, accusing the Detroit resident of covering up his membership in the Nazi-backed Ukrainian auxiliary police, participating in pogroms against Jews and killing at least one in the woods in a nearby Jewish ghetto. So you're saying that the Detroit Free Press and the government, what they said in their records is wrong?
Number one, the Ukrainian American Bar Association asked for my help. That was a professional compliment. Number two, we established.
You think it's a compliment? You think it's a compliment to be asked to defend a Nazi?
Fact that I identified a little bit ago, and the court found in Mr. Kalaman's favor. And number three, the only evidence upon which he was convicted associated with a shooting was disputed 70-year-old evidence, and Mr. Kalaman had early-stage dementia and couldn't contest it. The only reason the evidence was received in court was because it couldn't be contested. It was never authenticated by
what about the
person, and the United States
what about the
did not
Ukrainian
make him leave the country.
What about the
any
Ukrainian
time he died.
auxiliary police? Kalaman admitted himself to being a member of.
Of course,
Excuse
and
me,
it
let me
was
finish.
not a Nazi organization.
Okay, no, but it was
found not to
documented.
be.
It was the UAK was documented to be complicit in Nazi crimes. Quote, during the first week of German occupation of the Ukraine, members of the Ukrainian auxiliary police took part in pogroms against the Jews, according to the leader of Israel's Holocaust Memorial Museum. Later, they escorted Jews to their forced labor sites and guarded the ghettos. Kalaman was ultimately stripped of his U.S. citizenship in order to be removed from the United States because of the participation in Nazi-sponsored acts of persecution while serving during World War II. As an armed member of the UAP, the Department of Justice announced in 2011.
Those were the allegations the court found were not established by the evidence.
So you don't have a problem defending this guy?
Those were the allegations the court found were not established by the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I would defend you if you were falsely charged.
I'm not a Nazi.
Crazy like that.
Well,
and anybody can make a crazy accusation. This was tried in a court found in favor of Mr. Kalaman on that charge.
Now, you told the Free Beacon that while the Ukrainian immigrant had concealed his true identity while applying for U.S. citizenship, you admitted that.
There was no contest about that. He didn't conceal his identity as much as the location where he was during the war, which he didn't completely disclose.
Asked if you had any qualms about defending a man accused of Nazi war crimes, you stood by your work. You said it's not an issue. I've raised it, disclosed it when appropriate. I was involved on a professional level and did my best professionally for a person who decades after these events needed help. I performed a professional service. It was a service that I rendered without making a judgment on the person. Kalaman died in Detroit while under deportation order, according to the Associated Press, noting that the German authorities had also filed an arrest warrant for the former Nazi as a result of his war crimes. So everybody but you believes this.
Oh, no, that's not true at all. The court didn't believe it. The Court of Appeals didn't believe it. You're absolutely wrong about that. Look, I served in the United States Army. I didn't learn to be a coward. I learned to stand up for things that are false. I learned to stand up for the truth. The truth was established in court. You're reading allegations. If you expect to persuade your readership by reading allegations and not findings, you mislead them.
I'm just telling you what has been reported in the AP, what's been reported in the Detroit Free Press, what's being excuse me, let me finish. What Germany says about him and what the Jewish Holocaust Museum says about him. There's a pretty compelling. There's a pretty compelling.
The Holocaust didn't speak on this.
There's a pretty compelling case here that in fact this guy is guilty of what he was charged with. And I'm not sure that I would be as enthusiastic as you are. By the way, the person that spoke was from Israel's Holocaust Memorial Museum, and his name is Yad Vashem, according to him.
Just entirely ignoring the fact that the newspaper printed the allegations. You need to read the outcome. And you know what? the people who tried the case for the United States and I got along in a thoughtful, professional relationship throughout this proceeding. I wasn't a coward. I made a difficult decision to deploy my professional skills because it looked like the case was of historical significance, and we established that an organization important to the history of Ukraine was not sympathetic to the Nazis. We won that point. All of the allegations you read don't change that, don't diminish the fact that I was strong enough to stand up to this, and I'm strong enough to stand up to the forces that would falsify things in the United States Senate. Yeah. I'm also strong enough to stand up to foolish reports about polls that don't reflect what's going to happen in Nebraska next week.
You sound pretty angry. Are you angry?
Oh, not at all. I am not angry. I am really having the time of my life campaigning with the Nebraska people and watching them reject an extremist like Mr. Sass left.
Well, let me ask you this question. You're against the Keystone XL pipeline?
I'm in favor of the farmers and the ranchers who would be hurt by it and by the conduct of the company that wants to build it.
I didn't ask you. Did I ask you about the farmers? I asked you, are you against the Keystone XL pipeline?
And I gave you the answer that I have represented and continue to, and stand up as forcefully as I can for the Nebraska interests involved in that pipeline, which would include abandoning it under our soil when it's used up.
Did you vote for Barack Obama?
The question is, did I vote for Barack Obama? Of course I voted for Barack Obama. My wife and I contributed to his campaign.
So you voted for him in 2008 and 2012?
Yes, we did.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how good a president would you rate him, 10 being a great president, 1 being horrible?
I've answered that question publicly before.
I'm asking you now. Some people, a lot of my audience has never heard from you.
I've given him a 7, which means a 70. That's a D-, but it's a passing grade.
So what is the biggest accomplishment you think Barack Obama has made to the country? We have 50 million Americans in poverty, 50 million Americans in food stamps. We have the lowest labor participation rate in history, and he will go down as having accumulated more debt than every other president before him combined. What has he done that you think is so good?
We've reduced poverty. We've reduced
That's not true.
Who are without health
That's
insurance.
not true.
We've reduced
You're wrong.
The amount of
there are tens of millions. Sir, that's
improved
that's not true.
Of the American people by beginning to turn the corner.
Sir, wait, let me correct the record. There are 20 million more Americans in poverty, 20 million more Americans on food stamps since he became president.
I think you need to take a look at the Department of Labor statistics instead.
I'm looking at it. There are 50
some right-wing think tank.
It's not a right-wing think tank. These are government numbers. There are more people on welfare. There are fewer people participating. There are fewer people participating in the labor force since the 1970s.
That's absolutely false, and you know it's false. And you know.
You want to make a bet? Do you want to make a bet on that one point? Would you like to make a bet that we have the lowest?
For an argument that you want to
make?
No,
you said it's false. I will bet you that this is the lowest labor participation rate since the 1970s. Do you want to bet it?
I've graduated from those sorts of 8th grade bets.
Oh, you've graduated. So in other words, you're willing to say it's false, but you're not willing to put your money. Listen, I'll bet you $10,000.
Mr. Hannity.
And you can use it on your campaign.
Engage in illegal wagering on your program, I respectfully decline.
To the charity of your choice. I'll make it to a gentleman's offer to the charity of your choice for children.
Well, I know what the data is.
Or the military.
I know that you falsify it on a regular basis.
Well, you're calling me a liar now.
To your next question, if you have another one.
I do have plenty of other questions. What do you feel about securing America's borders? Do you like the idea?
Pardon me?
Do you like the idea of securing America's borders?
America's
borders
security is not an immigration issue. It's a military and police issue.
So do you want to put the police and the military on the borders?
Not if we can avoid it.
Well, the borders are wide open right now. I've been there 10 times. Have you ever been down to the border?
We have a police force on the border.
No, we don't. It's wide open.
And I've been across the border. Well, the border between the United States and Canada is wide open.
Yeah.
Most of the immigration that occurs from the Middle East occurs in the north.
I went down and I sat in a briefing where people from Yemen, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Syria are crossing our southern border. Is that a problem to you?
Oh, my goodness, Mr. Hannity.
Yes,
there
sir.
are over 1 million Syrians who are now refugees in Turkey.
What does that have to do with our border?
Have a context for the question at all, and I don't know what evidence.
Well, illegal immigration is impacting.
Are entering the United States.
Let me educate you, because clearly you're not informed on the issue. Because it's impacting our educational system, our healthcare system, illegal immigration, a criminal justice system. It's having a huge impact. There are millions and millions of illegal immigrants in this country right now. What should we do about it?
That there is no evidence of anybody from the Middle East coming in through the
Excuse me.
border.
I sat with Governor Rick Perry, and I sat through Navy SEALs that are working on the border, giving a briefing, saying they're capturing people from Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, and Pakistan.
Navy SEAls deployed to the Mexican border.
That's correct. They now work in border. That's right. They work in border patrol.
Staff about that order. My goodness sakes.
Now I know why you're 29% down.
SEAls are not deployed to the INS.
Now I know why you're 29% down on the polls. You're not very bright.
Thank you, sir. I'll bet you that the people of Nebraska would be interested to make that judgment.
All right, I'll tell you what. I'll even bet you for the charity of your choice that you're going to lose by double digits or more. You want to take that bet? You're so confident you're going to win?
Are we back to childish bets again?
They're not childish. I'm offering to give money to your charity. Do you have a charity?
Mr. Hannity, why don't we do this?
Why don't we do this?
Either you ask me a substantive question, or why don't you move to your next guest?
I'm out of time. I don't have any more time to talk to you. You kind of wasted enough of our time. You got to admit that's funny. Now I know why he's 29 points down. Unbelievable.
For more of the Sean Hannity Show, go to Hannity.com.